Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Simply Trade Roundup. My name's Annik. I'll be your host today, as always. And today is the life of a trade podcaster. Where am I getting this from? So obviously, we all know I'm a Swiftie. And I actually am wearing my merch today from the Eras Tour. Let's not make a clip of that, actually, but probably we'll have a clip and we'll post it. There's been a lot of, talking around it, and every brand is now doing the whole Taylor Swift thing because she's huge and coming out with a new album, The Life of a Showgirl, which is just amazing. And I think, we have Cindy Allen, who's our trade Taylor Swift here. That's what we call her. And I can't wait for her to do a spin on this, which will come out which is already out by now. So you need to go watch it because I know she's going to be the life of a ... I don't know, fill in the blank. You'll find it on our podcast page, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Pandora, whatever floats your boat.
I haven't heard that in a while.
But okay, here we go. We have a special guest, obviously, who just already chimed in. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to introduce you before I give you guys my biggest trade news. So we have Nathan Cheney today in the studio. Nathan is the supply chain advocate, podcaster, entrepreneur, and he also, you have your own business agency. He started Supply Cheney in late 2022 and kind of went on from there. And he has lots of things happening where you're kind of like an influencer in this sense. I think that's what you say, right? It's funny because, there's two worlds of influencers, I would say. And I guess the trade world is now becoming like a sort of the space where you can also influence other people, which is kind of cool. But, and by the way, I'm so thankful that you're here and we have such good things to talk about because I feel like right now this is so important, networking and getting a space to feel safe and kind of learning more things. And you kind of provide that for the industries, which we will talk about because I'm saying, because there's multiple. But let me just quickly get into the news. So, there's lots happening. Obviously, the past few podcasts we had, we're just talking about tariffs. Now there's going to be, and that's a big change already. So people are probably struggling right now. We haven't talked to a lot of people that are practicing it at the moment and going through these changes, businesses that have. But we've talked to lawyers and they're kind of scrambling and they know what they're going through. So hopefully we'll get more of that coming soon. There's also de minimis, which will go away August 29th. We'll talk about that. That is a crazy thing. And I'm not sure how that's going to affect businesses, but it seems like it'll be a struggle. So, I would not want that for businesses, but it's a big change. So we'll see. We'll see what our guest will say about that when we record that episode, and that'll be obviously after August 29th. All right. Now that being said, here we go, talking about what matters today. Thank you so much, Nathan, for holding because I can talk forever, and we just talked about that. I think we both can. So you Supply Cheney. I love that name, by the way. So your name is Nathan Cheney and you called it Supply Cheney, which is just, that makes sense for you. Tell me first of all, what made you start this?
Well, I was, I worked for 13 or so years in the industry. I have a degree in logistics and supply chain management. Worked for 3PLs, manufacturers, Silicon Valley tech startups, doing a little bit of everything all over the world of supply chain management, from trucking and transportation, warehousing, and a little bit of procurement in there, and some tech and project management, all the above. And a couple of years ago, like you said, late 2022, I jumped out to go do my own thing. And I've always been entrepreneurial in my heart. And so I finally I felt like the ingredients and the network and stuff that I needed to be able to finally go do that. And I was just what a lot of people do when they exit, I think, like kind of the corporate world, is be a consultant, because you've got like this experience and you've seen a few things and you can go lend that expertise to other companies. Well, as I kind of do, I got a little bit bored of that. And so in addition to layering on top of that, I was also working on my MBA, I guess, at the time as well. But then that still wasn't quite enough. So I thought I will go and do some videography stuff, and I'll start a YouTube channel. And, I think at the time I might have been the president or immediate past president of the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals here in DFW. And all of those groups do a lot of tours of facilities. I gotcha. They take tours of facilities a lot, and of warehouses, of factories, and all sort of stuff, to be able to let people see behind the curtain and see how things really work in logistics and supply chain. And I realized that not everyone gets that opportunity, because there's only 20 spots available for this tour, and there's 200,000 people in Dallas or whatever that work in supply chain alone. So not everyone's getting access to be able to go see those things. So I grabbed the camera and mic, went to go do that, realized that the people who are really making an impact with media in supply chain all had podcasts. So I was like, well, I guess I'll go do that, even though I never ever thought I would be a podcaster. Went and kind of put that on, built some more tools and things to help just be a resource. And over time, it started to make sense, like the idea of supply chain, so it's a fun name, great play on words. And now I look at anybody's last name and I'm like, oh, what business could you start using your last name? That's like the fun game I play now.
I love that.
But I was going to say that. So the thing that happened, I think that was really like a big turning point was coming up with what my mission statement was and what my goal is with this. And when I came up with that, that's what kind of helped unlock the next level. And that mission statement is to be a creative, connected, and capable supply chain resource. And so it's very broad, it's very open. So it allows for lots of things to happen to try to accomplish that mission. And the Supply Chain Social Club, which is how we connected and met, is one of those initiatives to help be connected and to connect others. So that's kind of like the supply chain-y concept. And so now it's just, I'm on just this kind of tour of, I don't know, awesomeness of just organically kind of finding a place to add resources and creativity and have a little bit of fun within the supply chain industry.
Yeah. And, okay, so obviously Simply Trade is mostly, we talk trade compliance, we talk kind of behind the scenes, regulations and what's going on and how to follow certain rules and blah, blah, blah. And then there's supply chain. We don't talk much about supply chain. That's why I said earlier industries, and I think trade compliance and supply chain, while they overlap and we work together, they're separate. I think they're separate. Well, that's my kind of view on it. And I wonder if you can kind of talk about the supply chain and trade compliance overlap, or how is it different? Or because I know you were mostly in the supply chain area. Do you ever talk to trade compliance people, or is that totally separate? Like, what's I have a hard time distinguishing those.
Sure. It's a great question. I love this. As you read earlier, I am a supply chain industry advocate. I love supply chain. I love the topic, much like many people who are passionate about what they do. Those that are fortunate to be passionate about what they do who have found that calling in life, right? So for me, supply chain is the end-to-end movement and planning and stuff of a good or a service from its raw state to its sitting in front of you at your house or in your business condition, right? So a good way to look at it is like corn going from the field to being processed, put into a can, sold on a shelf in a store, and taken to your home to eat for dinner, right? So that entire process and everything that happened is all is all the workings of the supply chain and everything involved. So it's the fertilizer that goes into the ground, it's the seeds that go into the ground, and the production of the corn stalk. It's the harvesters and the pesticides and all sorts of stuff to get that corn to a processing facility. It's the trucks and whatnot that moved it from the field to processing. It's the manufacturing process that took it off of the cobs, put it into a can, close the can, put that into inventory in a warehouse, figured out how much inventory was needed to meet the demand of corn eaters all around the world, and then ultimately delivering that to stores or directly to your door, however that might be, so everyone can eat this corn. And so for me, there was transportation in there was warehousing and distribution, there was procurement, there was planning how much of this corn needs to go where, and how big of a factory do we need to be able to process it to be able to feed all of America. And so in there, you might have some bits where you needed to export some of that corn to Canada and Mexico and to Europe and whatnot, right? That little piece of it, that export and import piece for me is where global trade plays into that whole ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's the making sure that all the forms and the legal sort of hoops that you need to jump through to make sure that you legally move this product across borders and stuff. That to me is where kind of global trade and compliance comes in. I don't think there's a strong global trade need within like intra United States, like intra company country moves in trade, right? It's when you go outside of the borders that it really comes into play. I
love that. And for the supply chain aspect, I mean, obviously life has changed. And I think here on a Simply Trade podcast, we've talked, I think every past of our pod episodes have talked about what the current situation is like today. For you, do you see it so differently, like supply chain now? Do you view it the same still that it was? Or is there also a significant, obviously like there's been tariff changes and whatnot, but do you feel that way or does it still feel the same for you?
No, so supply chain historically, it has come about as being its own discipline and its own bit of expertise. Like if you were like to go back decades, supply chain management and whatnot was basically called the transportation department in a company. It was just, you've got a truck, you got to take your truck of goods to the neighboring processing plant, and that's it. Like, it's on paper. That's about it. Now, with the complexity of like e-commerce, global trade, and importing and exporting, and having things made in countries where it's cheaper to make them than where the consumption point is, and all these other sort of factors have complicated what used to be a very basic supply chain where Farmer Brown had a field of corn and he needed to get it to the market, and that was it, right? So like the way that we consume and make things and materials and stuff is so much more complicated and it keeps complicating even more, that you need like actual experts and professionals in this. And so if you can imagine, the folks that are the chief supply chain officers at companies need to make sure that everything going onto the shelf in a particular store, if we're talking about like a grocery store, every single bit of what happens to make those things get on the shelf and into customers' homes, that's all supply chain. It's massive, and it's a huge amount of data and decisions and optimization, because if you're not efficient with how you do all this, you're not going to be able to make money. So doing it well and efficiently is a big key to being a profitable business in general. So that's kind of how I look at it. And on my podcast, most people will come on and say, you know what, Nathan, before COVID, my parents didn't really know what I did. Now, thanks to COVID, everyone knows what I do in supply chain. Everyone knows what it is. And now everyone's an expert in it too, apparently. Because that's all in the news now. So it's the popularity of supply chain has like exploded over the past 5 years or so.
It's funny because like during COVID, that's when kind of, TikTok took off, and the influencers became what they are now because they took the time, and it just became this huge thing. I think COVID was a huge impact on that, made a huge impact on people's lives, and people took opportunities and kind of, started to like blow up. And I feel like in the trade industry, it's the current situation of the changes that are being made. And I think people are finding new opportunities to kind of get through the industry and become who they want to be, or, for businesses. Obviously, it's a hard time as well. I want to talk more about networking. I kind of want to get into it because that's your expertise. I think you provide networking to a lot of people. And it's not just supply chain people, but it's also trade compliance. It's trade compliance people, warehousing. There's so many different groups of people, right? And you kind of connect them. How has it been, or what are the impacts of that? Because I feel like in the business world, in the industry world, those people usually don't talk, and you give them a place where they can interconnect and, kind of discuss what each of their roles are. And I feel like that makes different parts of the industries be like, oh, wait, I had no idea they were doing that. Or I had no idea that that's what they were doing. So like, why are we doing this? Or why can't we change this to make this better if they're doing it this way? Have you seen any of those stories, or like, what's your take on that?
So the fun thing, the way that you just teed all that up is so similar to what happens in large organizations where where businesses and organizations operate in silos, where the IT team does their IT thing, the accounting team does theirs, HR does theirs, supply chain and logistics does their thing, and everyone kind of is siloed. And even within just like maybe the logistics and supply chain department, maybe the transportation people don't talk that well or interact that much with the trade compliance team and the legal team and the procurement team and the planning team, and they kind of operate in silos. And the whole idea of your chief supply chain officer is they need to like bring all those parties to the table, make sure everyone is talking to each other and considering all viewpoints whenever you're making a decision that affects your entire business. And I guess to some degree, what I'm attempting to do with Supply Cheney and the Supply Chain Social Club is to kind of just like create opportunities and facilitate conversations where folks in those different silos of the supply chain have an opportunity to interact and engage with their own peers. In global trade, everyone within global trade and compliance have an opportunity to go network and meet with each other and learn from each other, but also to be able to go attend the transportation sort of gathering, or the marketing and sales, or the procurement, whatever it might be, so you can learn more about what the other folks that are part of the supply chain mechanism do and understand what's going on there. And it's a little bit just the way I've always operated is I've always been like the more the merrier kind of guy, right? And I like that. And a big thing with Supply Chain Social Club is it's called the Social Club, and it's not called the Supply Chain 30-minute presentation, break out your notepad and pen club, because there's plenty of opportunities, I believe, out there to go and develop your technical skills and be trained and learn how to do your craft, right? Where I find the most value is, and what I have the most fun doing, is just getting to know people on a more personal level, and then allowing those professional conversations or a recommendation for a software or a provider or a best practice will find its way into the conversation. But for me, it's all about the people behind the processes and getting to know those stories. That's a lot of why the podcast exists, is to hear about the people behind these businesses and processes.
And obviously there's so much good coming out of that, because that's why people return, right? Because they want to connect and they want to know other people's stories, and they want to learn on how to do their job easier and better. And I love that, because I mean, it's funny. Obviously, sometimes you don't want to talk about your job outside of your job. But if it's in a fun way, I think it's nice. I think if people care enough, and build those relationships, it doesn't seem like work anymore, and it makes it more passionate, like in what you're doing. And there's many people in the trade industry that seem to want that, just to make the world a better place in a way. That sounds very deep, I think, but I think that's kind of what trade is, because the world can't run without trade. And if you put it that way, then these networking sessions are so important. There basically should be a lifeline, like as the podcast should be, as training should be, as networking should be in this industry, right? It's like kind of like the backbone of everything. And I want to address, so there's an upcoming global trade cafe coming up, and we'll be attending. Global Training Center will be part of it. What does that look like? Because there's so much going on right now in the industry. What does that look like when people get there? What are the questions? What are they talking about?
Well, for the most part, again, am really focused on just letting people connect and organically chat. Like my favorite thing to do is just go to happy hours. I'm going to one this evening for a supply chain group here in Dallas. And it's like, for me, it's just getting to know people. And wherever the conversation may go is where it goes. Like I said, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there for like very focused webinars and focused trainings and on particular topics. And for me, again, I just want to keep it kind of a blank canvas. And so what it looks like, though, when people arrive, it's the Supply Chain Social Club uses a platform that feels like you are in a game almost. And it simulates being in a particular environment with chairs and tables and couches, and you can move around the space. You can see who all is talking to who at what other tables. And then as the host, I can hit a scramble button that scrambles everyone and puts everyone at different tables. It's kind of like speed dating. Virtually from the comfort of your own home or office or whatever it might be. And specifically with Global Trade Cafe, we have it at 10 a.m. Central Time. And that's because we want to make sure that folks in Europe can attend. So it's about 4 or 5 p.m. for them over there. And so the intention behind Global Trade Cafe was to make it in a way that it could have a global audience. And so what's been fun is growing my network in making some really meaningful connections with people in France and Ireland and England from here in Dallas, Texas, without having to leave my home. And these are people that I will have lifelong relationships with, and I'm working on other projects with. And it was solely all stemming from meeting them at the Global Trade Cafe, at some point, and then just carrying on that conversation. Yeah,
I love it. And I'm excited for that. And we're excited to make those connections with other people. We were there last time. We had to sign up early, but this time it's a different story because we're part of it. And we want to connect, and we want to bring, our networks together to network even further. And that's what we just said. It's good to have kind of the compliance side, the supply chain side, kind of connecting and understanding what everyone's doing, what their issues are, and how can we resolve them. Nathan, I'm so excited for that. And I hope these people that are listening by the way, we love our listeners. They're fantastic. That they join and, we can connect as well in a different way, because actually I'm not able to talk to them. Clearly, I'm only talking to you. We're talking to our listeners, but I can't interact with them in the way I would love to, such as in conferences and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate you talking about that. And I know there's so much good coming from that. I do have a last note, and it's not even about this. It's actually, this is a new era for the Simply Trade podcast. We're actually, it's funny because we're seeing each other now in the next era after this episode. Is it the last episode that she'll edit? No. There's 2 more episodes, I think, that she'll edit, but our producer is leaving us. It's Mara. She's behind the scenes, and it makes me sad because she's awesome, and she's done such a great job producing all our videos, kind of making sure that our audio is correct and everything is going good, image, whatever. And so she'll be leaving. So we're sad to see her go. And if you do have a word to say, leave it on our LinkedIn, because she's done such an amazing job. And I just want to thank her for that. I know she's listening, maybe. She's also just getting away from the conversation. But thank you so much. And so we'll be in a new era after this week. Just like Taylor Swift said, see you in the next era. So I just wanted to make that note. So again, Nathan, thank you so much for our conversation. I appreciate you very much. And looking forward to August 21st. Everyone, find us on LinkedIn. We'll be reposting sooner to the date, which actually it's coming up next week, right?
Yeah, we're 1 week away.
This week. So this is out. This is out Monday. We're recording on a Thursday. So this will be out the Monday, the 18th. So that Thursday, that'll be the Trade Cafe. Please join us, everyone. I would love to see your faces. And that is a wrap. So thank you so much and have a great day. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.